Okay, so take 3. Okay, the Torah portion is called Kedoshim, as everyone here has been told twice. For those people who are online, though, Kedoshim is the plural of the Hebrew word that is commonly translated as holy, or more recently, people have started to translate it as set apart. In Hebrew, you would just call something the holy or a holy, and then you would know that whatever it was a holy thing of that description. In our English translations, we have extra words thrown in. So if you call something the holy, and you're talking about Yehovah, then we would translate it in English as the Holy One. If we were talking about his sanctuary, the place where he dwells, then we would be calling it the holy place. If we were talking about the first fruits offering given to Yehovah, and we called it the holy, we might translate it in English as the holy offering or the holy thing. But what it would literally say in Hebrew is the holy. So call Yehovah the Holy One, you call him the Kadosh or HaKadosh. To call us the Holy Ones, plural, we would use the plural of Kadosh, which is Kedoshim. So literally what we would be called is the holies. Now we've probably got an idea of what it is to be holy that is borne out by our culture. And not only by our culture, but by where the word Kadosh is used in Scripture. It is predominantly talking about things that have been set apart for Yehovah's use. The majority of the usage of the word Kadosh is speaking of things that are Yehovah's. So that's the noun. We would call something holy or the holy or a holy. The noun is Kadosh. Comes from a verb, as all Hebrew words do, which is Kadash. Okay, and to Kadash something means to separate it out from other things. It means to set it apart from something else. In English, we might talk about sanctifying something. But again, that gives us a certain image of what it is to sanctify something. We think, oh, you're making it holy. And we've got the Catholic Church or the High Anglican Church or whatever church that speaks of things being holy, like, oh, give it reverence because it's holy. We've sanctified it. Give it reverence because it is sanctified. But in Hebrew, you just speak of kadashing something. The majority of times that's used in Scripture, it's talking about setting something aside for Yehovah's use. So in Scripture, it kind of has that meaning, but not always. And for the people who are going to watch this later on, I posed a question about 3 images to people who are here, whether or not these things are holy. So when you're watching this video later on this evening, I want you to ask yourself, is this holy? It's called a monstrance. It's where the Catholics put what they see as the manifest body of Christ. The wafer, they see it as being the body of Christ. So they would call it holy. My question is it holy? Second picture was of a used sponge in the context of our household. In our household, Ashley and my household, is a used sponge holy? So again, for people who are watching this later, ask yourselves, is this holy? It's good as a refresher for the people who are here as well. And then the yolk of an egg that has been separated or set apart from the entire egg, from the white of the egg, is that something that we could describe as holy? Because the way that most people would think, you think an egg yolk's not holy, a used sponge isn't holy, the objects that the Catholic Church call holy, they're certainly not holy. In Jeremiah 51:27-28, we read, "Lift up a banner in the land, blow the ram's horn among the nations, prepare the nations against her." This is talking about Jerusalem. The word that is translated as prepare here is kadash, from which we get kadosh. Okay, so it's saying make the nations holy against Jerusalem. And we see it again in the next verse. Separate the nations against her. Kadash the nations against her. If this was translated as make the nations holy against her, then we might have a bit of a difficulty in understanding it. But if we were Hebrew readers, then that's literally what it would say. And if we had the same idea of what it is to be holy or to make something holy or sanctify it as we do here in England, then that would maybe seem a little bit weird. But when we understand that to make something holy is literally to separate it, then we can understand a different meaning. There are 3 different words in Hebrew which mean to separate something. There's badal, there's kadash, and there's natsar, from which we get the Nazarite. Okay, and they all mean to just separate something. In the scriptures, predominantly where we read kadash as a word to separate, it's after the word badal has already been used. So when Yehovah speaks of us as having been kadashed, as being kadosh, set apart, it's following him saying, I have, or it follows, he actually says, I have separated you from the peoples. I have badaled you from the peoples. And that is how you are kadosh. You have been kadashed, and you've also been badaled. They're synonyms that mean the same thing. And we're going to see the word badal in a whole load of places, followed by the word kadash. So if you think of a loaf of bread, you could see this in 2 different ways. Okay, you could see the loaf of bread, or in multiple different ways. You could see the loaf of bread as being separate, as being distinct from the other objects in reality. Okay, and you could then speak of when you slice it into slices of bread, you could say it has been badaled from the things around it. It is a separate, distinct thing. When you slice slices of bread, you could say you are kadashing those slices of bread. You're setting them apart from the whole. Okay, you could also say, if you've got a loaf of bread and you slice it, you could say you're badaling that loaf of bread into slices of bread. You're separating it into slices of bread. And then when you take 2 slices of bread out of it to make a sandwich, you could say that you are making those slices of bread holy unto your sandwich, which would sound like a weird way of phrasing things to us, but that's how the words work in Hebrew. That's literally what the words are saying. When we read the word kadash or kadosh in Hebrew, usually what we're talking about is things being set apart unto Yehovah, them becoming his. Okay, that's intrinsic to the idea of them being kadosh. So the idea of making slices of bread holy to your sandwich would seem weird to us. So in answer to the question, is the Pope holy? Yes, the Pope is holy. Men have made the Pope holy. Is he holy unto God? Yes. Men have made the Pope holy unto God. Does Yehovah see him as holy unto himself? No. And that's the important thing. What does Yehovah say is holy? What does Yehovah say is set apart to him? What does he say is his? Men can make whatever they want holy unto Yehovah. Doesn't make it holy unto Yehovah to Yehovah. We've got a good example of that in Exodus 32, verse 5. Aharon saw and built an altar before it, and Aaron called out and said, tomorrow is a festival to Yehovah. So what's Aaron doing? He's making the next day holy unto Yehovah. But it's men doing it. Doesn't mean it is holy unto Yehovah. We have the same example in Christmas or in Easter. Are those days holy unto Yehovah? Yes. But are they holy because that's their significance to Yehovah? No. Men have made those days holy unto Yehovah, not Yehovah. The days that are holy unto Yehovah, we talk of as feast days. Okay, they are the appointed times. In Leviticus 23, which Charlie will go into next week, it says, Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed times of Yehovah, which you are to proclaim as set apart gatherings. Okay, so Yehovah says to Moshe, I want you to go and tell Israel, these are the days that have the significance to me of being set apart. You can make whatever days you want set apart unto me. They're not actually set apart, though, unless Yehovah has told us that they're set apart. The Hebrew says, proclaim as set apart gatherings. It says, kara, kadosh, mikra. Okay, mikra actually comes from kara. Kara means to call something. It's translated as proclaim here, but you are to call these days holy. Callings together, I suppose, would be a good translation of them. And what does he say about them? He says you're to call these days holy. He says that they are my appointed times, because what is holy to Yehovah are the things that are his. We also have not only set apart periods of time which are made holy by Yehovah or declared to be holy, and we're to declare them to be holy as well. We also have things like the first fruits offering, which is given to Yehovah. All the offerings which were given in the temple, they were given to Yehovah. They became his. And he tells us what to do with those things which are his. His appointed times, which are his, he says, call them appointed times. So what do we do as his people? We call those distinct periods of time, we call them holy unto Yehovah. It's the same for material things which are Yehovah's. Okay, he says, these things are mine. I want you to treat them in a certain way. Okay, you can't just be coming into the temple or the tabernacle, because that's set apart unto me. It's my holy place. It's my sanctuary. The tithe, he says, this is mine. The tithe is mine, which is why he says that it is robbery to go and spend the tithe, because it's already his. If we take what is his and we do something with it, we are robbing Elohim. If we take the first fruits and we do something other than what he says to do with it, we are stealing from Yehovah, whatever it is, his holy place. If we were to go and steal the tabernacle and go and set it up in our back gardens, that would also be robbery of that which is Elohim's. So when Elohim declares something to be holy or to be set apart, we have to be very careful to do exactly what he says to do with it, because he is God. In Genesis 1, we see this word, the word badal that we mentioned. We see that mentioned several times. As I say, it's a synonymous word in Hebrew with kadash. It means to separate something out. Elohim saw the light that it was good, and Elohim badaled the light from the darkness. Okay, and this concept is intrinsic to the idea of us being set apart and of things generally being set apart. We know that his word is set apart. His word is light. His word has been set apart from the darkness which is in the world. And the same thing is said to us as his set-apart nation. We are set apart as light is from darkness. We're kadashed, as the light here is badal. They're synonymous terms. So Elohim badaled the light from the darkness. And Elohim said in verse 6, let a firmament come to be in the midst of the waters. Let the firmament badal the waters from the waters. So the firmament of the heavens separates the waters above from the waters beneath. We could also speak of it as kadashing, making holy, setting apart the waters from the waters. Okay, so we should have a clearer understanding of what it is to be holy. It is to be separate from something else. It's not to have some kind of reverence applied to us or anything that man might have told us. Elohim made the firmament, and he separated the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it came to be so. Elohim said, let lights come to be in the firmament of heaven, of the heavens, to separate the day from the night. Okay, so the lights, the sun and the moon, let them be for signs, for appointed times, for days and for years, because the sun and the moon separate, they badal, the light from the darkness, the day from the night. Verse 18 says that they're to rule over the day and the night and to separate the light from the darkness, and Elohim saw that it was good. So the majority of the separations of the badals that we see Elohim doing are separating light from darkness, and that is how we are holy also. In Genesis 2, 1-3, after Elohim has done all of his badaling, okay, he separated the days. The days are now distinct individual units comprised of day and night. In Genesis 2, we see him use the synonymous term. It says, thus the heavens and the earth were completed and all their array. And on the seventh day, Elohim completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day, and he kadashed it. He didn't badal it because it's already been badaled from days 1 through 6 by the sun and the moon. They are what separate, badal, the days one from another. Elohim further separated out the seventh day, though. The word that we have there is he has kadashed it. He has made it holy, or he has set it apart, because on it he rested from all his work which Elohim in creating had made. So the basic concept of what it is to be holy, what it is to be set apart, here you can see it as each one of these blocks is in an individual unit. This block, though, if you take this block and you put it over here, okay, you have badaled that block. Okay, if you were to further separate it onto another use, you were going to use that block for something else, you could say that you've made it holy unto whatever use. Okay? This red ball here has been badaled. Each one of these balls is a separate ball, but this red one has been kadashed. It's been made kadosh. In what way? In the fact that it is red, whereas the other balls are white. Okay, so all the peoples have been separated out into groups of people. Israel has been kadashed from those groups which have been badaled and made something which is holy. It's different. And not only is it holy in the general sense, it is holy unto Yehovah. It belongs to Yehovah. They are his people, his set-apart nation. In Romans 7, verse 12, it says, so that the Torah is truly set apart. In Greek, the word is hagios. In Hebrew, if this was a sentence written in Hebrew, the word would be kadosh. The command set apart, hagios or kadosh, and righteous and good. Okay, and it's his Torah. It has been separated. It is light that has been separated from darkness. In John 17, verse 14, Yeshua said, he's praying to the Father here, and he prays, I have given them your word, and the world hated them because they are not of the world, as I am not of the world. Elohim created the world. He separated everything out. The world came to be as it is. Then his word is set apart from the world. When he's praying to the Father, I think this is interesting. He says, I've given them your word, and the world hated them. Having his word is what sets us apart. It's a part of what sets us apart, as well as Yeshua's blood and various other things. Okay, so his word is part of what sets us apart. People commonly complain that when they're walking in the word, they find it to be an incredibly lonely experience. Why is that? Because we have been made distinct from the rest of the world. So inherent in that concept is that there are not going to be many people like us. We're going to be different from them. And the world hates things that are different. We know that on a very basic level. People get bullied in school for being different, for example. So we're aware of that concept. When it comes to the word of Elohim, you've got an extra separation, though. You've got something that is Elohim's, which makes us distinct from the world. But I think it's important for us to remember, even though we would look around and say, wow, there aren't many people like us, and we're not very well liked in the world because we're distinct from the world, actually, what we are becoming is more like the Holy One, or the Kadosh, Elohim himself, Yehovah. Okay, so from Yehovah's position, he is the only one that is like him. And through creation, what he has done and is doing is he is making a bride who is set apart from the world in the same way that he is set apart from the world. And the rest of the world hates it and hates him. So he's making a people that are set apart like him. That's the effect of what he's doing. I'm not saying that is what he's thinking in his mind. I have no idea. But that is the effect of what he is doing. He's making a people who are set apart in the same way as he is set apart, who cherish the same things that he cherishes. In John 15, a little earlier, Yeshua says, he who hates me hates my Father as well. Yeshua is described as the set-apart one. Yehovah is the set-apart one. We are the set-apart ones. We are like the Father. The world hates the Father, the world hated Yeshua, and the world will hate us because we are set apart in the same way. In Psalm 71, verse 22, it says, also with the lyre, I praise you for your trustworthiness, O my Elohim. I sing to you with the lyre, O set apart one of Yisrael, or Kadosh Yisrael, holy of Israel, is what it literally says. And that must be an incredible thing for Yehovah. He is set apart. He's distinct from the world. The world hates him and hates what he's about, as the world hates us. And then we've got someone like David, someone like Charlie, when he plays the stringed instrument, and he praises Yehovah, not in some kind of empty praise of him, or I'm just singing songs that are like, oh God, he's brilliant, isn't he? I praise you for your trustworthiness, for your faithfulness. I am praising you for who you are, for what makes you set apart from the world. And that must be an incredible treasure from Yehovah's position. In Mark 1:23-24, we see that Yeshua is also called the set-apart one, or the holy. And there was a man in their congregation with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, saying, what have we to do with you, Yeshua of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know you are the holy of Elohim. So Yehovah is called the holy. Yeshua is called the holy. We individually would be called the holy. Corporately, we would be called the holies, the kedoshim. John 10:36 says, do you say of him whom the Father set apart, talking of Yeshua, and sent into the world, you are blaspheming because I said the son of Elohim. So we see something important here. We see the concept that the Father has set these things apart. Things can be set apart by something else. Okay, we talk of the priest's clothes. They have to take the clothes off and change into their regular clothes so that they don't go out into the community and make other things set apart. In Matthew 23, verse 17, it says, fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the dwelling place that sets the gold apart? Okay, the dwelling place itself is the holy, and that makes the gold within it set apart. So again, this is another example of something which is set apart to Yehovah that we have to treat in a certain way. Okay, when we have in the book of Daniel them being told to go and get all the gold that has been raided out the temple so they can have a party with it, it doesn't end very well for them. In Leviticus 20, verse 26, it says, you shall be kadosh to me. Okay, you're going to be kadosh to Yehovah. For I, Yehovah, am kadosh. And I have bedalled you from the peoples to be mine. So when he bedalls us from the peoples, he separates us from the peoples, he makes us kadosh. You could equally have the word, I have kadashed you from the peoples, but this gives us a clearer view of what we've been looking at. This is actually the second to last verse in this Torah portion. In this Torah portion, we're going to see commands which make us set apart from the rest of the world. They're the commands which make us the Kedoshim. Okay, in the second part, we're going to look at things which should separate us from the Gentiles, that sometimes people don't really get when they're first coming to Torah, or when they first come to Elohim, to the Bible, and they still follow after certain practices which are not good. And then in the third part, we're going to see the commands which end with this statement. Okay, these commands have made you holy to Yehovah. I've separated you from the peoples, from the Gentiles to be mine, and by me doing so, I have made you kadosh. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 2 says, do you not know that the set apart ones shall judge the world? And if the world is judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? I think people misunderstand this statement, and they think, we're going to judge the world? Are we going to be there with Yeshua, judging the world at the end? That's not what it's talking about. We will judge the world if we rule and reign with Messiah, because his kingdom is going to work according to the Torah, and there's going to be officers and there's going to be judges, okay? And we will judge the world. We will rule and reign with Messiah, but we're not going to be there at the judgment judging them, okay? But that we have this phrase here. If it was written in Hebrew, it would be the name of the Torah portion. The set-apart ones will judge the world. Ephesians 5:25-27, husbands, love your wives as Messiah also did love the assembly and gave himself for it in order to set it apart. So Yeshua gave himself, his blood was shed to Kadash, to separate, to hagiazo in Greek, to set it apart and cleanse it, according to what Charlie was talking about last week with atonement being made, atonement bringing cleansing. He cleansed it by the washing of water by the Spirit, by the Word, okay, or washing of water by the Word, in order to present it to himself, okay, like an offering, a splendid assembly, not having spot or wrinkle or any of this sort, but that it might be kadosh, or hagios in Greek, and blameless, that it might be tamim, or amomos. Okay, so he's presenting the assembly to himself like an offering, and just like an offering, it is to be amomos, or tamim, but it is to be set apart. That's what the Word does. The Word sets us apart. I spoke a little bit before about the idea that it is this separation of light from darkness. We see Elohim separating light from dark. We see him giving us the lights in the firmament for the separation of light and dark. And we also know that his word is a light. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And as we saw before, the word is kadosh. The word is separate. It is set apart. And it is light. Part of us being set apart is us being light in darkness. John 1:1-5 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. Okay, Elohim's word, just like my word, you could describe my word, the words that I'm speaking, as being me. They're an expression of me. So you can say JP's word was JP. It's not all of JP. There's more of JP. But the word was Elohim. He was in the beginning with Elohim. In the beginning, everything is spoken into existence. Let there be light, for example. All came to be through him. The word is described as a him. Without him, not even one came to be that came to be. Okay, so without the word of Elohim, nothing would have come to be. In him was life, and that life that was in the word of Elohim was the light of men. And we know of countless examples of the word being light. The light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So in the beginning, Elohim bedaled the light from the darkness. He separated the light from the darkness. The light is kadosh. Psalm 119, 129 to 130 says, your witnesses are wonders, so my soul observes them. The opening up of your words gives light, gives understanding to the simple. Okay, so there's this bedaling, this separating of the wise from the simple, of the light from the darkness. John 17, this is Yeshua, the full prayer. It says, I pray for them. I do not pray for the world, but for those whom you have given me, for they are yours. Again, they're Elohim's. Okay, they're holy. They're set apart because they're Elohim's. All mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been esteemed in them. Okay, so those things that the Father gave to the Son were the Son's. And all things of the Father's are the Son's. And I am no more in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to you set apart Father. Okay, Holy Father. Guard them in your name, which you have given me, so that they might be one as we are one. When I was with them in the world, I was guarding them in your name, which you have given me, and I watched over them, and not one of them perished, except the son of destruction, which is Judas, that the scripture might be fulfilled. So we are in the world, okay, but we're set apart from the world. Our prayer should be, do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one, because we are surrounded by darkness, okay? But we're set apart, and we want to retain being set apart. We as the salt want to retain our saltiness. We want the Father to guard us while we are in the world, while we're surrounded by the world. We don't want to be taken out of the world, because the Father has a purpose in us being set apart in the world. We want him to guard us. We don't want him to lead us to where temptation is, and we want him to guard us from the evil one. Now I come to you, and I speak these words in the world, so that they have my joy completed in them, so that they have my shalom. You could think of that as, I have given them your word, and the world hated them, because they are not of the world, as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the wicked one, or guard them from the wicked one. That should be our goal as well. They are not of the world, as I am not of the world. Set them apart in your truth. Your word is truth. His word is light. Light is set apart from the darkness. They are set apart, or we are set apart by his word, by that light, and that we would become light. That is also why we, from the day we heard, have not ceased praying for you and asking that you be filled with the knowledge of his desire in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, to walk worthily of the Master, pleasing all, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of Elohim, being empowered with all power according to the might of his esteem, for all endurance and patience with joy, giving thanks to the Father who has made us fit to share in the inheritance of those who have been set apart from the Kedoshim, made us fit to share in the inheritance of the holies. In what? In the light. Who has delivered us from the authority of darkness. What's the authority of darkness? When the scriptures speak of darkness, you will hear of the shadow of death. We'll hear of the power of death, which is in the hands of Hasatan. The authority of darkness, the shadow of death, is being delivered from death and transferred into the kingdom of the Son of his love, being transferred into the kingdom of light, away from the shadow, darkness of death, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. In 1 Peter 2:9 it says, you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a set-apart nation. What nation is that? Yehovah's nation. If it's Yehovah's, it is holy. It is kadosh. It is set apart. A people for a possession. Again, a possession, it's Yehovah's. But what is our purpose in being Yehovah's possession? That you should proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness, out of the authority of darkness, the shadow of death, into his marvelous light. Away from the world into the light. You've been set apart into the light. In John 9:5, Yeshua said, while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And of course, we know that we are to be conformed to his likeness. While we are in the world, we are to be the light of the world. Matthew 5:16, let your light so shine before men so that they see your good works and praise your Father who is in the heavens. The set apart one in the heavens. Show them what is set apart that they're not going to be familiar with, because they're not set apart. They're what that has been set apart from. Show them that light so that they get a glimpse of who the Father is. Leviticus 27-8, also from this Torah portion, says, and you shall set yourselves apart. You shall kadash yourselves and shall be kadosh. For I am Yehovah your Elohim. You shall cherish my laws and do them. You shall keep my laws and do them. You shall shamar my laws and do them. I am Yehovah who kadashes you. So what is it that sets us apart? One of the things is his Torah, is his word. That sets us apart. And we're going to see those commands. And we're going to see just how different from the rest of the world doing things like that actually is. We will see the light that we are to show other men. 1 Peter 1:13-19 says, therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind, being sober, set your expectation perfectly upon the favor or the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah, when our salvation is realized, when we are truly delivered from all of our enemies, including the final enemy, which is death. As obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts in your ignorance. Those things are former lusts. They're what we have been kadashed from, what we have been bedazzled from. Instead, as the one who called you is kadosh, so you also should become kadosh in all behavior. As we've seen, we've got set apart days, we've got set apart items. We as people can be the set apart ones. We can also have behavior which is set apart, behavior which is modeled after the word of Elohim, which is set apart, behavior which is light. Because it has been written, be kadosh, for I am kadosh. And that is from our Torah portion today. If you call on the Father, who without partiality judges according to each one's work, pass the time of your sojourning in fear. If you call on the Holy Father to make you holy, then your behavior following that, having been made set apart, should be set apart also. Knowing that you were redeemed from your futile way of life, inherited from your fathers, not with what is corruptible, silver or gold, but with the precious, the holy blood of Messiah, as of a lamb unblemished, amamos or tamim. Okay, so that's what has set us apart, and we've been redeemed from the futile way of life that we had previously. We have been set apart. We had the way of life that we had before. We've been bedazzled from that, or we've been kadashed from that. We've been made holy from that, and now we are distinct from that futile way of life to walk according to what is good. Philippians, not second Philippians, no second Philippians, of course. Philippians 2:14-16 says, do all matters without grumblings and disputings, in order that you be blameless and faultless, children of Elohim, without blemish, amamos or not kadash, actually amamos or tamim, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. Crooked and perverse generation, the Gentiles, the world, we've been set apart from that, and now we shine as lights because we emulate his light. Holding on to the word of life, for a boast to me in the day of Messiah, that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. Because if we don't do that, if we let go of those things which make us set apart, which maintain us as being set apart, as being light, then we have run in vain. We have labored in vain. That should be a terrifying thought. Proverbs 4:18-23 says, but the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn that shines ever brighter unto the perfect day. That's what our lives should be as we emulate Yeshua more and more. Our light should shine brighter and brighter unto that day when Yeshua is revealed from heaven. The way of the wrong is like darkness. They do not know at what they stumble. And when you show them the light, most of them are going to hate it. My son, listen to my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not depart from your eyes. Cherish them, guard them, protect them, keep them in the midst of your heart. For they are life to those who find them and healing to all their flesh. That's why it's so crazy that when those who are in darkness find the light, they don't run to the light. If only they knew that it would be healing to them. But Yeshua says, look, I've made them blind lest they turn and I heal them. He doesn't want people who cherish darkness to come to him. He wants the people who cherish the light to come to him. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the sources of light. Where is your heart? What do you cherish? What do you keep? Is it light or is it darkness? 1 Peter 2, 1-11 says, having put aside then all evil, all deceit, hypocrisies, envyings, all evil words, as newborn babes desire the unadulterated milk of the word, in order that you grow by it, in order that your light would shine ever brighter unto that perfect day. If indeed you have tasted that the Master is good, drawing near to him, a living stone rejected indeed by men, but chosen by Elohim and precious, just as the set-apart ones are chosen by Elohim and are precious to him. They are his. We draw near to him, as opposed to what we saw a couple of weeks ago, being drawn away by the tempter. We're set apart in the world. We pray he would not lead us into temptation. He would keep us. He would guard us from the evil one who would seek to draw us away from him. You also, as living stones, are being built up a spiritual house, a set apart, a kadosh priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Elohim through Yeshua Messiah, as we've looked at recently. That's why we're to guard our heart. We offer those spiritual sacrifices in the temple of the Ruach. Because it is contained in the scripture, see, I lay in Sion a chief cornerstone, chosen and precious. He who believes on him shall by no means be put to shame. This preciousness then is for you who believe. But to those who are disobedient, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Because we can do that. We can run the race in vain. We can labor in vain if we choose to not submit ourselves to him, to not give ourselves entirely, but rather to be disobedient in whatever thing it is that we've chosen. It would be better for me to be disobedient in that thing. A stone of stumbling and a rock that makes for falling, who stumble because they are disobedient to the word to which they were also appointed. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a set-apart nation, if indeed that is speaking of us. Again, we could be appointed to be disobedient, or we could be appointed to be this set-apart nation. The choice is ours and how we respond to the word. A people for a possession, that you should proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who once were not a people, but now the people of Elohim, his possession, his holy nation, his holy priesthood. Beloved ones, I appeal to you as sojourners and pilgrims to abstain from fleshly lusts which battle against the soul. That's what the tempter will come and will work upon you with the lusts of the flesh. What are the lusts of the flesh? They're the things in which you will not submit to Elohim. The flesh will not submit to the Torah of Elohim. So the lusts of the flesh are the lusts to do anything that is contrary to the Torah. 2 Corinthians 4, therefore, having this service, even as we receive compassion, we do not lose heart, but have renounced the secret ways of shame. We've been set apart from them, not walking in craftiness, nor falsifying the word of Elohim, but by manifestation of the truth. Your word is truth. His word is light. His word is what will set us apart. Recommending ourselves to every human conscience. We manifest the light. They give praise to the Father who's heavenly, recognize that it is good. We recommend ourselves to their conscience in the sight of Elohim. And indeed, if our good news has been veiled, it has been veiled in those who are perishing. As Yeshua said, some are blind, some are deaf, in whom the mighty one, or the God of this age, has blinded the minds of the unbelieving. That's Hasatan. That's why we ask to be kept or guarded from Hasatan, so that the enlightening of the good news of the esteem of Messiah, or the glory of Messiah, who is the likeness of Elohim himself, does not shine on them. The good news of the Word, that's what the Messiah was. He was the Word made flesh. Okay, so that the enlightening of the good news of the Word is veiled in those who are perishing. For we do not proclaim ourselves, but we proclaim Messiah Yeshua. We recommend ourselves to the conscience of other people, not because we are good, because he is good, and we're emulating him, the Master, and ourselves, your servants, for the sake of Yeshua. For Elohim, who said, let light shine out of darkness, he bedaubed the light from the darkness, is the one who is shone in our hearts for the enlightening of the knowledge of the esteem of Elohim in the face of Yeshua, Messiah. Isaiah 60 says, arise, shine, for your light has come. In context, this is talking about New Jerusalem in the millennium. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the esteem of Yehovah has risen upon you. So this is when Israel are a nation before the Gentiles. They are a nation with Elohim dwelling in their midst. They're living according to the Torah. They're a light to the nations. Arise, shine, for your light has come. The esteem of Yehovah has risen upon you. For look, darkness covers the earth, thick darkness, the people, Hagoyim, the Gentiles. But Yehovah arises over you, and his esteem is seen upon you. The Gentiles shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. This is when we're a nation, we're dwelling in the land. The Gentiles will come to hear of the word of Yehovah. But now us individually, we can shine that light, and they will give esteem to our Father who is in heaven. Even if they speak against him and they speak hatefully against him, they will still recognize the light. Right, we're back. For people who are online, hopefully the sound's working now. If it's not, we're recording this anyway, so a full video will go out at the end. We recorded the first part as well in case it is working. Okay, so in the first part, we saw that we are set apart from the darkness. As Elohim separated light from darkness in the beginning, he does the same with us, and his word has been separated from darkness and is light. I found this verse in Romans 15, which is very interesting, this passage, considering what we've been looking at recently regarding being priests and bringing offerings to Elohim, because of course we are all Gentiles, and the offering that we bring to Elohim is accepted by him now. Romans 15, it says, but I have written 15, more boldly to you, very interesting, in part as reminding you, because of the favor given to me by Elohim, to be a servant of Yeshua Messiah to the Gentiles, with the priestly duty of bringing the good news of Elohim. Okay, so if we bear in mind what it is to be a priest, it is to kahan. Okay, it's to operate and to present the word of a third party to other parties. And that's what Paul is saying is his priestly duty. If you don't understand what it is to kahan, and therefore what it is to be a Cohen, then this might just pass you by, or, is some kind of religious sounding fluff of, oh, it's my priestly duty to do these things. But now that we understand this, the priestly duty of bringing the good news of Elohim so that the offering of the Gentiles becomes acceptable, set apart by the set apart Spirit. Okay, so Paul, as a Cohen of Elohim, is kahaning so that the Gentiles can become Cohens and can bring their offering to Elohim, and their offering would be acceptable before him at that point. But the Gentiles are regarded in Scripture as walking in darkness, and it is from the peoples that we have been separated, we've been badaled, and therefore become kadosh. In Genesis 1 verse 4 it says, Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim badaled the light from the darkness, as we have been badaled from the peoples to become kadosh. Isaiah 9 1-2 says, but there is no gloom upon her who is distressed, as when at first he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. Okay, so Zebulun and Naphtali, they were a part of the house of Israel. They were the ones who were led out with fish hooks out of the land, and afterward more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan in Galil of the nations. Okay, it's called Galil of the nations because Galil or Galilee had become where the Gentiles dwelt. When the house of Israel were taken away, they became part of the Gentiles. So by the time Yeshua came, Galil or Galilee is referred to by this name, Galil of the nations. The people who were walking in darkness have seen a great light. Upon those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, a light has shone. So this is the authority of darkness, the power of death. We have light and we have the shadow, death, that which we have been redeemed from. So those people who are dwelling in darkness and were expecting death saw a great light, and upon them a light has shone. Isaiah 49 8-13 says, thus said Yehovah, in a favorable time I shall answer you, and in the day of deliverance I shall help you. I shall guard you and give you for a covenant of the people, to restore the earth, to cause them to inherit the ruined inheritances. So this is a prophecy which was spoken to Israel. To say to the prisoners, go out, to those who are in darkness, show yourselves. Okay, so the prisoners are those who are in captivity to sin, who would be taken into captivity to righteousness. Those who are in darkness, those who don't have the word. Let them feed on the ways, and their pasture be on all bare hills. They shall not hunger nor thirst, neither heat or sun strike them. For he who has compassion on them shall lead them, even by fountains of water guide them. Okay, so the house of Israel were scattered amongst the Gentiles, and this is the end of Yehovah in doing that. So that even Galilee became Galilee of the Gentiles. It wasn't of the house of Judah and Benjamin, and it was to bring the Gentiles to him. I shall make all my mountains a way and my highways raised up. See, these come from afar, and see those from the north and the west, and these from the land of Sinim. Sing, O heavens, rejoice, O earth, and break out in singing, O mountains, for Yehovah shall comfort his people and have compassion on his afflicted ones. Of course, this is a prophecy which is spoken to a people who are going to be scattered, and it's that comfort that they had of knowing that they would be called back. Psalm 107 8-14 says, let them give thanks to Yehovah for his kindness and his wonders to the children of men. For he has satisfied a longing soul and has filled the hungry soul with goodness. I presume to be talking about those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Some sat in darkness and in the shadow of death, bound in affliction and irons, because they rebelled against the words of Ale and despised the counsel of the Most High. He humbled their heart by toil, which is an interesting concept. They stumbled, and there was no one to help. And they cried out to Yehovah in their distress, and he saved them out of their troubles. He brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death, and he broke their chains in pieces, as he does to us, of course. Okay, he takes us from the authority of darkness, from the power of death, to life. Matthew 4:12-16 says, Yeshua, having heard that Yochanan had been put in prison, John the Baptist, withdrew into Galilee. Leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is by the sea, and the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali. This is what that prophecy we read in Isaiah 9 was about. To fulfill what was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who sat in darkness saw a great light, and upon those who sat in the land and shadow of death, light arose to them. So this is what the set-apart one of Elohim, Yeshua, did when he went to these people. He was a light while he was in the world, as we are to be a light while we are in the world. Luke 1:67-79 says, and Zechariah, that's Zechariah, John the Baptist's father, was filled with the set-apart spirit and prophesied, saying, Blessed be Yehovah Elohim of Israel, and he did look upon and worked redemption for his people, and has raised up a horn of deliverance for us in the house of his servant David. That's Yeshua. As he spoke by the mouth of his set-apart prophets from of old, deliverance from our enemies and from the hand of all those hating us, to show compassion towards our fathers, as also prophesied as we read in Isaiah, and to remember his set-apart covenant. Okay, his covenant is set apart also. An oath which he swore to our father Abraham, to give to us, being delivered from the hand of our enemies, to serve him without fear, in set-apartness and righteousness before him all the days of our life. And you, child, Yeshua, shall be called prophet of the Most High, for you shall go before the face of Yehovah to prepare his ways, to give knowledge of deliverance to his people by the forgiveness of their sins, through the tender compassion of our Elohim, with which the daybreak from on high has looked upon us. Yehovah, the set-apart one of Israel, the daybreak on high, to give light to those who sit in darkness and the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace. In Hebrew, the way of shalom. I'm going to turn the volume up because there's going to be a couple of second video clip in a bit. For anyone who is online, I believe that you won't be able to hear this beyond anything which is coming through the speakers and picked up by this microphone. But the video which goes up later, which will have the full first part in, will have those clips inserted into it, if you're interested. Acts 26, they're not very important, to be honest. Acts 26, 13-18 says, At midday along the highway, O king, I saw a light from heaven, brighter than the sun, shining around me and those who journeyed with me. So this is Paul who spoke these words to King Agrippa when he was brought before him. And when we had all fallen to the ground, I heard a voice speaking to me and saying in the Hebrew language, so if anyone's got any doubts about what language Yeshua spoke, here he is appearing to Paul and speaking to him in Hebrew. Shaul, Shaul, why do you persecute me? Is it hard for you to kick against the prods? And I said, who are you, Master? And he said, I am Yeshua, whom you persecute. But rise up and stand on your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you as servant and a witness, both of what you saw and of those which I shall reveal to you. Delivering from the people and the Gentiles, delivering you rather from the people and the Gentiles, to whom I now send you, to open their eyes, to turn them from darkness to what is set apart as word, light, and the authority of Hasatan, which again is the power of death, the authority of darkness, the shadow of death, in order to receive forgiveness of sins and an inheritance among those who are set apart by belief in me. Again, we now share in the inheritance of the set apart ones, those who are set apart by belief in Yeshua, who is the Word made flesh. But Paul is sent to the Gentiles, and we can see he's sent to them to turn them from darkness to light. Deuteronomy 4:15-20 says, therefore diligently guard yourselves, shamar yourselves, for you saw no form when Yehovah spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, at Mount Sinai. Lest you should do corruptly, and shall make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the heavens, the likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. So they're not to make a representation of Yehovah, as they did with the golden calf, of course. But this is why he didn't appear in any form to them, so that people don't focus on the form in which he appears. And lest you lift up your eyes to the heavens, and you see the sun and the moon, the stars, all the host of the heavens, and you be drawn away. We know how we're drawn away by the tempter, into bowing down to them and serving them, which Yehovah your Elohim has allotted to all the peoples under the heavens. We've been set apart from that, but Yehovah has made that their allotment, if you like, what is appointed to them, to go after all of these bizarre forms of spirituality. When they don't understand who Elohim is, they'll go after, oh, look, the sun, isn't the sun brilliant? We'll go after the sun. Or the moon. The moon's really where it's at. It's the mystical moon, or the stars, or whatever it is. People will go after those things instead of serving the true image of the Creator, as seen in Yeshua, and should be seen in us also. But Yehovah has taken you, has brought you out of the iron furnace, which you've seen before, the oppressive melting pot. The word for iron is talking about things that are oppressive. Furnace, it's kind of not quite the right word, but he's taken us out of the world. Think of it in that way. Out of Mitzrayim to be his people, an inheritance as it is today, to make us holy unto him, to make us his. 2 Chronicles 33:1-2 says, Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And he did evil in the eyes of Yehovah, according to the abominations of the Gentiles. This guy was a king of Israel, and he did evil, and the evil that he did was the same evil that the Gentiles did. When we get to the third part, we're going to look at some of the commands which are described as the abominations of the Gentiles, the things that the people of the world will be involved in, things that we are not to be involved in, however. He made his sons pass through fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. He practiced magic and used divination and witchcraft. He consulted mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the eyes of Yehovah to provoke him. And we would hope as his people that we wouldn't be involved in things like this. But surprisingly, perhaps not given the terrible teachings that have come from men regarding his word, his people are caught up in all of this sort of thing. They do after the abominations of the Gentiles that we are warned not to do. In Ephesians 6:11, we're told to put on the complete armor of Elohim, which turns out to be the word of Elohim, to learn to know the word of Elohim, to be armored in it against the schemes of the devil, against the schemes of that tempter that we are to pray, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one, because he will come to tempt us, to try to get us to stray, to draw us away from Yehovah's word. Okay, so the more of his word that we know and the better that we understand it, the better armored we are against such a thing. I like this. I don't think that this guy John Piper has the greatest theology, all told, but I like this that he said once. My feelings are not God. God is God. My feelings do not define truth. God's word defines truth. So the way that we feel about things, the way that we apprehend them when we come into a situation, the way that seems right to a man, but ultimately leads to death, that's not Elohim. Even if we call it Elohim, or we say, this is what we do in the church, we walk in this way or we walk in that way, that's not Elohim. Okay, great example of it. I've shown this slide before. Marilyn Monroe talking about the idea that everything happens for a reason. Okay, everything happens for a reason, doesn't it? Well, it's not actually what the word says. We can choose to believe that if we want, but the word actually describes something very slightly different, something that is similar enough to it that we might be fooled by such a notion. If we read through this, we will appreciate the dangers of believing such. Everything happens for a reason. People change so that you can learn to let go. Things go wrong so that you appreciate them when they're right. You believe lies so you eventually learn to trust no one but yourself, and sometimes good things fall apart so better things can fall together. It's not right though. Okay? Things don't go wrong so that you can appreciate them when they're right. Okay? Yehovah doesn't bring about sin. He doesn't bring about wrong in the world so that ultimately he can do what is right, or we can do what is right. He has allowed such things to exist in the world, knowing that ultimately we will turn to what is good. So it's kind of similar, but it's actually dramatically different from this. Okay, and I've shown this also. Everything happens for a reason, but sometimes the reason is that you're stupid and make bad decisions. Not how I would phrase it, but there's enough truth in this for it to be poignant. Okay, and it's phrased in a hard-hitting way, isn't it? Okay, sometimes we make bad decisions, and that's the reason that things happen. But the idea that everything happens for a reason, because the implication being because Yehovah ordains it, that is not true, and it's not scriptural, but it is something that a large percentage of Yehovah's people believe to be true, and they live their lives as if it is true. Isaiah 43, 1-2 gives us some truth. But now, thus said Yehovah, your creator, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Israel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. You're set apart. You're mine. When you pass through the waters, I am with you. And through rivers, they do not overflow you. When you walk through fire, you are not scorched, and a flame does not burn you. So when things fall apart, Yehovah is there with us. He will not forsake us, and he will not leave us. But he didn't make all of it happen as if to say, have all of this bad thing happen to you, and then you can make it good. Sometimes he might do that. So again, there's a tiny little grain of truth. Sometimes he might allow you to experience something. But overall, the idea that everything happens for a reason is not something that anyone has gotten from Scripture. Psalm 46, 7-11, Yehovah Sabaoth is with us. The Elohim of Jacob is our refuge, Selah. Come see the works of Yehovah, the astonishments he has wrought on the earth, causing all fighting to cease. It doesn't say causing all fighting. It says causing all fighting to cease. Unto the end of the earth, he breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariot with fire. So we get a little taste of the truth behind this. Okay, he didn't cause all fighting, but he does ultimately cause all fighting to cease. All will be made good. Be still and know that I am Elohim. I am exalted among nations. I am exalted in the earth. Yehovah Sabaoth is with us. The Elohim of Yaakov is our refuge. So when things are bad, we have him as our refuge. But we should not speak of him in those terms that he brought all of those things about on us. Romans 8:28 gives us the real truth of the matter. It says, we know all matters work together for good to those who love Elohim, to those who are called according to his purpose. So when there is something bad, he will use all things for good. That doesn't mean that he is instigating the bad, though. It means he will use the bad for good. And all things will work together for good for everyone? No. To those who love him and those who are called according to his purpose. Leviticus 19:26 says, do not eat meat with the blood. Do not practice divination or interpret omens. Another thing that Yehovah's people find themselves doing, because a common kind of path, certainly a path that I followed before I knew Yehovah, is to become aware of a greater spiritual reality beyond the physical world. Okay, so these teachings are the teachings of the New Age, of alternate forms of spirituality. What I'm talking about is the interpretation of signs or of omens. When you see something happening around you and you say, it's a sign that I'm to do this, or it's a sign that I'm to do that. Or when an event works out in a certain way, to say, I'm to learn some kind of greater spiritual truth from this, because the spiritual supersedes the physical. The physical comes first, and then the spiritual comes second. It all comes from these other forms of spirituality. And if people have come to know Yehovah after knowing these forms of spirituality, they can kind of carry these things over and say, well, I knew these things beforehand, and I know these things to be true. But they're not true. They're very slightly off, which is often how the tempter will come to you. He won't come to you with something which is blatantly against the word of Yehovah. He'll come with something which is just that little bit off. The issue of near-death experiences has come up this week. That's another one of these things, near-death experiences. What are they about? Well, near-death experiences will often involve the feeling of the presence of another being. Okay, be that a being that calls themselves God, or a being that calls themselves Jesus, or whatever it is. And the experience that the person has will be an experience which, without directly teaching, indirectly teaches something about the Word of God. It teaches, that when you die, you can go to heaven and speak with God and then come back to earth and tell everyone about it, for example. It'll teach you something that is just ever so slightly off from the Word. And as soon as you believe something that's ever so slightly off from the Word, then you've opened yourself to believing all sorts of things that are off from the Word. If you, for example, begin to interpret omens, then maybe you can be led astray by seeing things around you that cause you to believe something else. And then you'll be led to believe that something has validity because it came in the form of a sign to you, or whatever it is, a near-death experience. That'll teach you something about the word that is slightly off. So we are to be careful to be fully armored with the word of Elohim and not to look to anything outside of that as a means of guidance. People are interested in that. I spoke about it in detail in this video, which is taken from an earlier iteration of the Torah portion that we're studying. Another thing for people to be aware of, the slide's not there, but there's, if you type in the way Biblical Fellowship dreams, you'll see how Yehovah gives dreams and which dreams we would be to pay attention to and which dreams are, from our own mind that we might interpret ourselves to mean something else. 1 John 4 verse 1 tells us something which is repeated multiple times throughout Scripture that it seems that people just disregard. It's like, that's just something that I'm going to edit out of the word when I read it. I'm not going to pay attention to it as if it's a warning from the word of Elohim about something that I'm to pay attention to. Beloved ones, do not believe every spirit, but prove the spirits. Okay? Interesting. Don't believe every spirit. Prove the spirits that they are telling the truth, which of course we do with the word. 2 Corinthians 11 tells us, for such are false apostles. There will be false people who have not been sent to speak the word of Elohim, who are false, deceptive workers, masquerading as apostles of Messiah. No wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. This is how he will come to you, with some kind of spiritual truth. Or, no, this is the light. Believe this or follow this. It is not surprising then if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So we're counseled many times in the word of Elohim not to pay attention to deceptive sources of information. The Spirit distinctly says that in the latter times some shall fall away from the belief, paying attention to misleading spirits and teachings of demons. That's an amazing warning that we're given in the word. People are going to pay attention to misleading spirits. And we think, there's no misleading spirits. I'm not paying attention to this spirit that's trying to mislead me into this or whatever it is. I'm not going to test the spirits. The idea of spirits, it's just not something we think of in the world. But we're told that this will happen. Speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their conscience seared. Lies, which is, of course, anything which denies what the word says. So if the word says, don't interpret omens, and we say, but this sign led me to this thing, and this was a good thing, we're speaking lies in hypocrisy because we are proclaiming to be the set-apart ones of Elohim, and yet being hypocrites by following after these things. Jeremiah 23, 32 to 40. Nope, everything's okay. Says, see, I am against those who prophesy false dreams, declares Yehovah, and relate them and lead my people astray by their falsehoods and by their reckless boasting. But I myself did not send them, nor have I commanded them. Okay, so this is something which happened in Jeremiah's time. And of course, we know everything's founded on the word of Elohim. These things will repeat into the future. Okay, so there are people who prophesy false dreams. They have false dreams and then they think to go and tell everyone about the false dream that they've had. But Yehovah didn't send them and he didn't command them. They do not profit this people at all, declares Yehovah. And when these people or the prophet or the priest ask you saying, what is the message of Yehovah? Then you shall say to them, what message? I shall forsake you, declares Yehovah. That's the message from Yehovah. You want to go to these people and, it's the years that the locusts have stolen from you. They will be returned to you, and everything will be great for you. You shall have shalom, brother. As for the prophet and the priest and the people who say the message of Yehovah, I shall punish that man and his house. So if you go to other people and you say, this is the message that comes from Yehovah, or even, I don't know whether this is the message that comes from Yehovah. It could be, but I'm not sure. Okay? I will punish that man and his house. This is serious stuff. And as we read on through this, you'll see just how serious it is. This is what each one says to his neighbor and each one to his brother. What has Yehovah answered? And what has Yehovah spoken? But the message of Yehovah you shall no longer remember. But the message of Yehovah, rather, you no longer remember. What is Yehovah's message? It's in his word. They don't remember that anymore. They want to go after all the fluff and the nonsense. For every man's message is his own word. And you've changed the words of the living Elohim, Yehovah of hosts, our Elohim. You've changed them. You've made them into some kind of spiritual nonsense. This is what you say to the prophet. What has Yehovah answered you? And what has Yehovah spoken? But since you say the message of Yehovah, and this is the message of Yehovah, therefore thus said Yehovah, because you say this word, the message of Yehovah, I have sent to you, saying, do not say the message of Yehovah. I've sent Jeremiah to you to tell you, don't do that. Therefore, see, I shall utterly forget you and cast you away from my presence, along with the city that I gave you and your fathers. So it doesn't work out well, does it? Okay, I'll pour out my wrath on these people. I shall put an everlasting reproach on you and an everlasting shame that is not forgotten. That's quite serious, isn't it? If Yehovah came to you personally and said, I've put on you an everlasting reproach and an everlasting shame. Now, when people do these things, they often do them in ignorance. That doesn't make them okay. I can't declare, no, that's okay. But it will not be held against you following repentance. Once you've repented of these things, they will be held against you. You know, people speak in ignorance. These people were directly warned. We have his word, and now we are directly warned. We've considered this. But people read this sort of thing, and they just, I don't know, it's like they screen it out, and they just think, oh yeah, that sounds bad, but you know, I'll be okay. It's like the person who blesses themselves in the heart when they read the curses that are in the word of Elohim. We read of that in Deuteronomy 29. Okay, the man who blesses himself in his heart after he's read these curses. And put this in the form of a meme, because this made me laugh when I was considering this.
I'm in danger.
Turn that up for people. Some people might be aware of the meme already. I was saying to Charlie what a meme was before. I was trying to explain it in words. A meme is something which has been taken out of its original context, which is then has other contexts put on top of it as if it conveys those contexts. So this is actually taken from The Simpsons. I'm not trying to advocate The Simpsons, but that's not what this meme is. This exists as a meme in the world. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. So this is how these people are. This is kind of like the man who reads the curses and blesses himself in his heart.
I'm in danger.
I think that's a pretty apt description. One of the other times that I did the Torah portion, I used this meme. Okay, again, I don't know where this is from. Don't know if it's a comic strip which is good or which is bad, but a meme is something which has had its original context removed and then is used to portray other contexts. This also is how people are. They read, I will forsake that man and his house. It will have everlasting shame and everlasting reproach upon them. And the people happy to bask in that as they read the word and say, I will be fine. I will bless myself in my heart. Okay, this is the teaching I was referring to before, if people are interested in it. But this will tell you precisely how Yehovah speaks in dreams, when a dream is from Yehovah and when a dream is not. 2 Samuel 23 verse 2, we have the words of David recorded here. He said, the Spirit of Yehovah has spoken through me. How did the Spirit of Yehovah speak through David? Okay, his word is on my tongue. The same was true with the prophets. The word of Yehovah would come to them, tell them what to say, and they would speak the word of Yehovah. So they were speaking by the Spirit. David is also described as a prophet in Acts 2. The Elohim of Yisrael said, the rock of Yisrael spoke to me, the one who rules over man righteously, who rules in fear of Elohim, is like the light of the morning when the sun rises, a morning without clouds, tender grass from the earth, from sunshine, from rain. So this is what one who rules man correctly according to the mishpat of Elohim. Okay, this is what we are described as being like before the Gentiles, that our light would shine before them. But this is how the Spirit of Yehovah can speak through us. Okay, his word is on my tongue. James prayed at the beginning that Yehovah would teach us how to be led by the Spirit, which I'll cover now. Nehemiah 9:28-30 says, after they had rest, they turned back to do evil before you. Then you left them in the hand of their enemies so that they ruled over them. But when they turned back and cried out to you, you heard from the heavens and delivered them according to your mercy many times. So this is how Israel were before him. And warned them to bring them back to your Torah. This is what the prophets were doing. This is what Jeremiah was doing. Okay? No, you're doing something that's really bad. Yehovah isn't going to put up with this. Jeremiah was sent to warn them by Yehovah. But they acted proudly and they did not shema your commands. They didn't, when they heard them, they didn't trust and obey them. And they sinned against your mishpatim, which if a man does, he shall live by them. We've seen the word shema. Shema means to keep. To keep something is to protect it, to guard it, by implication, to cherish it. Okay, to do them, we might say, oh, I keep the commands of God. And what we mean by that is I do the commands of God. To do is to asa, and it's a word which involves kind of constructing something out of them. To shema, without the R, is to listen, to obey what is heard. To asa is to do the commands, and to keep them is to guard, to protect them. So we should say probably that we do the commands when that's what we mean. He shall live by them, and they gave the rebellious shoulder and hardened their necks, and they would not shema. So Yehovah did pour out these curses upon them. You had patience with them for many years and did warn them by your Spirit in the prophets, yet they would not give ear, they would not shema. Therefore you gave them into the hand of the peoples of the lands. And that's what we saw before. That's what he uses to bring light to the Gentiles. Acts 21, 3-4 says, and having sighted Cyprus, and having passed it on the left, we sailed to Syria and landed at Sor, for the ship was to unload her cargo there. And having found disciples, we remained there 7 days. And they told Shaul, Paul the apostle, through the Spirit, not to go up to Jerusalem. But what form does this take? Okay, the Spirit comes to them, or the word comes to them, one and the same, tells them something very precise, tells them, tell Paul not to go up to Jerusalem. Okay, it wasn't a case of, we were thinking that maybe Yehovah might have said something to us. We're not sure. You're going to have to judge for yourself. Maybe he said don't go up to Jerusalem. Maybe he didn't. Not really sure. No, they're very sure. The Spirit tells them precisely, tell Paul not to go up to Jerusalem. Having come to us, he took the girdle of Shaul, bound his own hands and feet, and said, thus says the Ruach Kodesh, thus shall the Yehudim at Jerusalem bind the man who owns this girdle and deliver him into the hands of the Gentiles. So again, it wasn't, maybe they said this. This is what the Spirit, this is what the word says. Precisely. The Jews are going to bind the one who wears this girdle. So the warning by the Spirit is very precise. It's not something wishy-washy. Ezekiel 13, 1-8 says, the word of Yehovah came to me saying, Son of man, prophesy against the prophets of Israel who prophesy, and say to those who prophesy out of their own heart, Shema the word of Yehovah. Thus said the Master Yehovah, woe to the foolish prophets who are following their own spirit without having had a vision. O Yisrael, your prophets have been like foxes among ruins. You have not gone up into the breaches. You do not build, nor do you build a wall for the house of Yisrael to stand in battle on the day of Yehovah. Their visions are false, their divinations a lie, saying, thus declares Yehovah, when Yehovah has not sent them. Yet they expect the word to be confirmed. Have you not seen a false vision? Have you not spoken a divination of lies? You say, Yehovah declares, when I have not spoken. And this is actually the same thing that we're doing when we're interpreting signs. Because effectively what we're saying is, Yehovah has given me a sign that this is what I'm meant to do. Therefore, thus said the Master Yehovah, because you have spoken falsehood and seen lies, therefore I am against you, declares Master Yehovah. And yet, just like Israel, when the prophets came and told them these things back then, Israel today will say, no, everything does happen for a reason. Well, signs are real. I know they're real because of the effect that they've had in my life, or whatever it is.
I'm in danger.
Then Yehovah said to me, the prophets prophesy falsehood in my name. I have not sent them, nor commanded them, nor spoken to them. They are prophesying to you a false vision, worthless divination, the deceit of their own heart.
I'm in danger.
Thus said Yehovah Sevaot Elohim of Yisrael, let not your prophets and your diviners who are in your midst deceive you, neither listen to the dreams which you are dreaming.
I'm in danger.
If only they realized that, though. If only they had that awareness. We're told in 1 Kings, then he said, therefore, Shema the word of Yehovah. I saw Yehovah sitting on his throne, and all the host of the heavens standing by him on his right and on his left. And Yehovah said, who shall entice Achav to go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? Because we have a certain idea in our heads, just as these sort of traditions can cause us to believe that we should be following signs, or we should be following this spiritual thing or that spiritual thing when it arises in our lives. We also have a certain view of Yehovah himself. Okay? Yehovah wouldn't do this. He wouldn't have a spirit go and speak lies through his prophets to entice people or deceive them. But here we see Yehovah says, who's going to go up to entice Achav? And a spirit came forward and stood before Yehovah. Why do you think we're counseled to not pay attention to deceiving spirits? That in the latter times, people are going to pay attention to deceiving spirits. Because if we don't cherish the word of Yehovah, we don't cover ourselves in his armor, we will be led astray by these things, by seemingly spiritual things. A spirit came forward and stood before Yehovah. He said, "Let me entice him." And Yehovah said to him, "In what way?" And he said, "I shall go out and be a spirit of falsehood in the mouth of all his prophets." And Yehovah said, "Oh, no, don't be a spirit of falsehood. Don't go and lie to them." No, he said, "Entice him and also prevail. Go out and do so." And now see, Yehovah has put a spirit of falsehood in the mouth of all these prophets of yours. And Yehovah has spoken evil concerning you. Okay, and we're told also, we're giving a specific warning. 2 Thessalonians 2, 9-12. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power and signs and wonders of falsehood that they've been allowed to do by Elohim. Power which has been given by Elohim. With all deceit of unrighteousness in those perishing, because they did not receive the love of the truth in order for them to be saved. So what's happening with them? They are deceived by the deceivableness of sin, the deceit of sin, the deceit of unrighteousness. They're fooled by that because that's where their hearts are. They've been blinded to what is the light. They have not received a love of the truth. If they had a true love of the truth, Yehovah would set them apart as his people, as his bride. Okay, so they've been deceived by unrighteousness. For this reason, Elohim, God, sends them a working of delusion for them to believe the falsehood. That's quite a statement. That's quite a way outside of most people's box when it comes to a reckoning of who God is. In order that all should be judged who did not believe the truth, but have delighted in the unrighteousness. He doesn't want them to delight in the unrighteousness. That's something that they have chosen for themselves, but he will bring those people into judgment, and he does this by allowing them to be deceived. Deuteronomy 13, 1-5 says, "When there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he shall give you a sign or a wonder, the sign or the wonder shall come true," exactly what we're reading about in 2 Thessalonians, "of which he has spoken to you, saying, let us go after other gods which you have not known and serve them. Do not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, even though they're doing these signs and these wonders before you. For Yehovah your Elohim is trying you. He's testing you, whether or not you'll believe that nonsense. He's trying you to know whether you love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart and all your soul." Okay, and he's given us his word so that we can know who he is, and we can discern that these spirits and these spiritual things which might happen are lies, so that he can test us to see whether we love him or whether we love the lie, whether we receive a love of the truth that we might be saved. "Walk after Yehovah your Elohim and fear him. Cherish his commands, Shema, keep, protect his commands. Obey his voice, Shema, listen to and trust and obey, and serve him and cling to him." Throughout all of this nonsense which might be going on around you to test you to see where your heart is, cling to Yehovah, cling to his word, which is him. "And that prophet or that dreamer of dreams is put to death, because he has spoken apostasy against Yehovah your Elohim." Elohim was using that falsehood to test you, and that person shall be put to death, just like him sending that working of delusion for those people to be judged. "Who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim and redeemed you from the house of bondage, to make you stray from the way in which Yehovah your Elohim commanded you to walk. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst." That's a concept that we'll look at when we come to the next part shortly. "Let no one be found among you who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices divination," something I was involved in, "or a user of magic," the bending of other people's will to one's own, "or one who interprets omens, signs, or a sorcerer. Let one, or one who conjures spells, or a medium or a spiritist or one who calls up the dead or one who interprets dreams or whatever the case is. Hopefully it's clearer now that this could well be talking about us if we allow ourselves to be drawn away. For whoever does these are an abomination to Yehovah. And because of these abominations, Yehovah, your Elohim, drives them out from before you. These are the abominations of the Gentiles we'll learn more of in part 3. Be tamim, or amamos, be without blemish before Yehovah, your Elohim. Let your light shine ever brighter unto that perfect day. For these nations whom you are possessing do listen to those who use magic and diviners. But as for you, Yehovah, your Elohim, has not appointed such for you. So let's be careful. Let's guard ourselves that we don't return to other ways of thinking. Psalm 31:3, you are my rock and my stronghold. For your name's sake, lead me and guide me. Okay, people think that that is kind of like Yehovah, don't know, like leading us along a trail of breadcrumbs or something like that. But he leads us and he guides us in a specific way that maybe people don't want to engage with. And that's through his word. That's through his spirit. His spirit and his word are one. Okay, so David prays, you're my rock and my stronghold. Lead me and guide me. Isaiah, if you extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall dawn in the darkness. That set apart light that we can manifest. And your darkness be as noon. Then Yehovah would guide you continually. Okay? He would satisfy your soul in drought, strengthen your bones, and you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. If you are following his word. Show me your ways, O Yehovah. Teach me your paths. He teaches us his paths. He leads us in the way everlasting. Lead me in your truth and teach me. This is what he does. This is how he leads us by his spirit, how he guides us by his spirit. For you are the Elohim of my deliverance. On you I wait all the day. O Yehovah, lead me in your righteousness. Because of those watching me, make your way straight before my face. Okay, so we don't need to be looking externally to get guidance from this spirit or that spirit. We learn Yehovah's ways, we learn his righteousness, and then we walk those things out. And then if Yehovah wants to deflect our course into something, he can do it. But we're not looking for his cue to do that. Yehovah is perfectly capable of doing that. Our responsibility is to follow his word. As long as we're walking in those straight paths in righteousness, he can send us somewhere if he wants. He can do whatever he wants in our life. But our cues for that are not external. Let me shema your kindness. Okay, his kindnesses are, his word is described as his kindnesses. Let me shema your kindness in the morning. Of course, walking in his word and doing the things in his word is to show his light, is to do his kindnesses. For in you I have put my trust. Let me know the way in which I should walk. Not by telegram. He's not going to come to us in the morning and say, this is how you should walk. This is a sign that you should walk in this way, or whatever it is. Let me know the way that I should walk. We do know the way in which we should walk. I was stupid and ignorant. I was like a beast toward you. Nothing to be ashamed of. Something that is true of everyone. Something that was certainly true of me. Yet I am always with you. You took hold of my right hand. This is what he's done. He's given us his word. You lead me by your counsel. His word is his counsel. And afterward, receive me unto esteem. What an amazing thing to be able to say that you were stupid and ignorant before Yehovah, and he took you by the right hand, and he led you in his kindnesses, in his counsel. And afterward, as a result of that, he's going to receive us into glory. Teach me to do your will, not by signs, not by anything else, by his word. For you are my Elohim. Let your good spirit lead me. That's his word. The spirit and the word are one. I have delighted to do your will, O my Elohim. Your Torah is within my heart. Let me instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. Let me counsel my eye be on you. This is Yehovah speaking. He's going to instruct us. He's going to teach us by his word. Okay? He's going to counsel us how we should walk. And his eye will be on us, and he will shamar us in the world. He won't take us out of the world. He'll shamar us when we're in the world. And we'll pray to him to lead us not into temptation, but to deliver us from the evil one. Trust in Yehovah with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Know him in all your ways, and he makes all your paths straight. You know him in all your ways, he'll make your paths straight by his word. My favorite example, when people are always looking for cues externally from Yehovah about what they should do, my favorite example of how Yehovah has it is in the garden. He's created all of these animals. And it says, and from the ground, Yehovah Elohim formed every beast of the field, every bird of the heavens, and he brought them to the man, to Adam, to see what he would call them. Yehovah is interested in what Adam wants to call the animals. He didn't give him a load of signs about what he should call the animals. He didn't try to lead him in any way about what he should call the animals. He wanted to see what the man was going to do. Okay, and as he looks down on us and he shamars us and he protects us, I am certain that he is interested in what we want to do. We have his word, the structure within which we build our lives. He tells us what's good and what's bad, and we can build what we want within that. And I am convinced within myself that he is just as interested in seeing what we will do as he was with Adam. He brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. Yehovah could have named all of them if he wanted to. But whatever Adam named them, that was its name. In this part then, we're going to actually cover some of the Torah portion. The actual text of the Torah portion. It just kind of made more sense to be in that order when I was putting it together. So verse 1 of Leviticus 19 says, and Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say to them, be set apart ones, be Kedoshim, for I, Yehovah, your Elohim, am Kadosh. As we saw 3 times at the beginning, Kedoshim is the plural of Kadosh. So you all be holy is because I am holy, is what he is saying. Each one of you, should fear his mother and his father and cherish my Sabbaths. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. So we've seen that word shamar, set apart, a few times throughout this. Other word that we've got there is yareh, fear. It sounds a bit weird. Fear your mother and father. If people want more insight into what it is to fear Yehovah and to fear your mother and your father, I would recommend this video. And if you want a little bit more insight about Shema and Shamar, I'd recommend this video. Verse 4 says, do not turn to idols. Do not make for yourselves molded gods. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. So we saw that word panah when we saw it translated as look at. What it is to turn your face towards. Okay, give your attention to, if you like, idols, false gods. And don't make for yourself a molded God, like they did very literally with the golden calf, and like people do within their lives when they construct for themselves a God and say, oh, we'll have this bit of the God of the Bible, and then we'll have this bit, which is, whatever my mind wants to conceive. Maybe this bit is everything happens for a reason. This bit is, whatever you want. People will construct a God that is appealing to themselves, and we're warned, don't do that and don't turn your attention to them. Do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another. Okay, so those things are two different things. Do not lie and do not deceive one another, because we might say something to somebody which is objectively true, but we can say something to someone that is true in order to deceive them. Okay, and we're told not to do that. Okay, it's not about don't lie exclusively. It's also about don't do anything to deceive one another. Kind of reminds me of when Yeshua is talking about adultery, and he said, you've heard it said, do not commit adultery, but I say to you, if you look upon a woman with lust, you've committed adultery with her already in your heart. Okay, it's not about the letter of have you lied or have you not lied. It's about, are you being deceptive? Do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your Elohim. I am Yehovah. And there's also a video on the channel called Profane that will explain exactly what it is to profane the name of Yehovah. Do no unrighteousness in Mishpat. Okay, Yehovah's Mishpat tell us how we're to deal one with another in terms of business, in terms of just our dealings with other people. They are his Mishpat, his justices would be a good translation, but not a perfect one. Do not be partial to the poor or favor the face of the great. So if you see someone who's poor, don't do something that Yehovah says, treat this person in this way. Don't not treat them like that because they're poor and you've gave them some kind of greater position in your mind because they don't have any money. Equally, don't do that when somebody is very powerful, when somebody is very mighty. Don't treat them any differently. Treat everybody exactly the same. Judge your neighbor in righteousness. Do not go slandering among your people. Do not stand against the blood of your neighbor. I am Yehovah. That's to harm your neighbor. Do not go slandering among your people. Okay, this is something that I want to focus on. If we remember what all of these things are, these are instructions of how we are to be the holy ones or the holies of Yehovah. This is how we're to be distinct from the people who are around us, because the people who are around us will go after all of this stuff. You see somebody who's offended by somebody, next thing they're slagging them off and they're slandering them. And that's just how the people of the world are. They have their own idea of what justice and what righteousness is, so they're quite happy to speak ill of other people. For us, though, we're set apart from that. Proverbs 26:22-27 says, the words of a slanderer are as dainty morsels which go down into the inner parts of the heart. This is how they are to us. When we listen to somebody slacking someone else off, it's like, oh yeah, I love that. That sounds great. They're like dainty morsels that go into our heart, and we're like, love that. That's great. That's not how we're to be, though. That's how the people of the world are, but not how the people who are set apart and are Yehovah's people are supposed to be. Burning lips with an evil heart are like earthenware covered with silver dross. Okay, we are the clay. He is the potter. We're described as earthenware vessels, our bodies covered with garbage, basically. That's what we are like before Yehovah. He who hates pretends with his lips. Okay, so this is how people of the world can be as well. when they hate somebody, they'll speak well to their face. But actually what it is they hate inside. And they cover that up. They pretend with their lips. They lay up deceit within them. Again, we're not to deceive one another. We're to speak very plainly to one another when it comes to things where we're offended, for example. Though he speaks kindly, do not believe him, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. And these instructions that we're reading through, I haven't gone through every verse, this is just the ones which stood out to me as how we are to be set apart. These are things that are supposed to set us apart from the abominations of the Gentiles, the abominations of the peoples of the world. So somebody who is pretending with their lips when actually they're offended or they hate inside, though they speak kindly, don't believe them, they're actually holding these abominations in their heart. Hatred is covered by deceit, and his evil is disclosed in the assembly. So this is not how we are supposed to be. If we've got a problem with somebody, we speak plainly to them, even if it seems like it might cause a rift between us. In my experience, what actually happens is you can talk to one another and say, well, this is how I was perceiving things. And the other person can either say, well, yeah, that was because I was really angry, or I think you've misunderstood me. This is actually the case. And in dealing with people like this, we are set apart from the people of the world. Matthew 18:15-18, if your brother sins against you, go and reprove him between you and him alone. Don't go and say, do you know what they did? They did this and they did that. Go and tell your brother that's not on. If he hears you, you've gained your brother. Okay? If he doesn't hear you, he might say, oh yeah, but it's because of this and it was just for me to do this or whatever. And you've not gained your brother. But if he listens to you, you've gained your brother. If he does not hear, take with you 1 or 2 more, that by the mouth of 1 or 2 witnesses, every word might be established. So you don't go to another person and tell them all about it and then say, come on, let's go and we'll tell that person together. It's not correct. You take the other person with you and you reprove the person with whom you have a problem, so that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every matter will be established. So you say, I've got this problem with you, and with that witness there, that other person can respond to you, and then both people can say, well, that's right or that's wrong. You don't go and slander somebody to somebody else, though, saying, well, this is what I'm supposed to do in Scripture. What you do, you go and you reprove them with someone else there. If he refuses to hear them, say it to the assembly. The assembly of Yehovah, as we've seen previously, is the leadership. That's why certain people can't become a part of the assembly of Yehovah, and yet we see that they can become a part of the congregation. So it's not talking about say it to the entire church, it's talking about say it to the leadership. If he refuses to hear the assembly, let him be to you like a Gentile and a tax collector. Plead your case with your neighbor himself. Do not disclose the secret of another. Okay, so this is the common thread throughout Scripture. Got a problem with someone, go and tell them. But tell them alone. Don't go about telling everyone else your problem with somebody. Brothers, do not speak against one another. He that speaks against the brother and judges his brother speaks against the Torah and judges the Torah. Because what does the Torah say to do? It says, go and reprove your neighbor. If you judge Torah, you're not a doer of Torah, but a judge. So if you've said, in this case, I don't think I will go and reprove my neighbor, I'm going to do something else, I'm going to go and tell this person, or I'm going to bear a grudge and hold it inside, then what we have become is one who looks upon Torah and judges whether or not it is correct, instead of being one who shamas, one who asas Torah. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Reprove your neighbor for certain and bear no sin because of him. Okay, so you don't hold things against people in your heart. You tell them plainly. You reprove them for certain. Okay, this is how we are distinct from the nations. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yehovah. So when people say, oh, all we do is we love Yehovah and we love our neighbor as ourselves. Well, if you go into the word, it will give you detail about how you're to love your neighbor. Or you're not being very loving, you're telling them what you think about them. That's what the word says to do. Not in a derogatory, I'm going to shout you down sort of way, but in a, this is my problem, this is something that you've done, this is me bringing it to you. Don't take vengeance against them. Don't bear a grudge. We have to remember when we're reading the Torah that we're reading a Hebrew document. So if we read, don't bear a grudge, and somebody says, oh, I'm not bearing a grudge. Not bearing a grudge, you know. I mean, I've forgotten about it, or, you know, I will continue on even though I've not brought it up to them, but I'm not bearing a grudge. Not bearing a grudge. In Hebrew, it's slightly different. The word for bear is natar. It's to keep, to maintain, to guard something. Okay, so it's when you've got a problem with somebody else, rather than you going to that person to address it with them, and then they can say, yep. Instead is you maintain that, or you keep that within yourself, and you don't go and speak to that person. That's what it's telling us not to do, not to have a problem that you keep within yourself, rather than going and reproving your neighbor. Do not turn to mediums, do not seek after spiritists to be defiled by them. I am Yehovah your Elohim. So again, we've got in the Torah something where it speaks of being defiled by sin. It's been there all along right from the beginning. It's interesting that it speaks in these terms, though. Going after mediums and spiritists will actually defile you. Do no unrighteousness in mishpat, in measurement of length, in weight, or in measuring liquids. Okay, the reason that we've got ridges around the edges of our coins now is because people used to do what was called coin clipping. And that was where you shaved off a bit of metal off the coin, because the coins that we used to have were silver, they were gold, and so people would just shave a little bit off each coin until they had enough maybe to make another coin. Here we're told, don't do that. Okay, in measurement of length, weight, or in measuring liquids, have right measurements. People would also have one weight, which they would use on the scales when they were measuring something out for a customer. You would have a weight which weighed less, slightly less, and then you would have a weight which weighed more when you were buying something. So you would go with your weight and you would say, give me a kilogram of whatever it is, and you put something that weighed 1.1 kilograms on there, and so you would get more. We're told not to do that. In a literal sense of be honest in commerce, have right scales, a right ephah and a right hin. An ephah is a measure of weight, a hin is a measure of liquid. I am Yehovah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. But having the right scales and the right weights is to do with judging correctly. Do no unrighteousness in justice. Sometimes that's translated as judgment, having judgment of something in matters of justice. Okay, so when we're judging a matter, when we're being just in a matter, we're not to have differing weights. We're not to say one person's behavior is good, particularly our own behavior, where when we behave badly, we're much more tolerant of our own faults. But when we see somebody else behaving badly, we want to give them down the banks for it, because we have different weights and different measures. We've said, well, when I do this, it's okay, Deuteronomy 25:16 says, all who do unrighteously are an abomination to Yehovah. So having these unjust weights is to be an abomination to Yehovah. A false scale is an abomination to Yehovah, but a just weight is his delight, because we don't just have the capacity to make Yehovah wrathful or angry or to grieve him. We also have the capacity within ourselves to delight the creator of all things. Matthew 7:1-5 says, do not judge lest you be judged. And in Greek, the word is krino. We saw when we went through Mishpatim a couple of years ago that the Greek words are related to the Hebrew word shafat, from which we get mishpat. Okay, so we can understand this in the same terms. When it says, do no unrighteousness in mishpat, Yeshua is talking about the same things here. Do not judge lest you be judged. With what judgment you use, or with what mishpat you judge rather, you shall be judged. So when you judge somebody else and you're judging them harshly, the same measure will be applied to you. Do not have unjust measures. Don't measure yourself and tolerate things within yourself and then not be forgiving of other people or tolerant of other people. With what judgment or with what mishpat you shafat, you shall be judged, shafated, krenod. And with the same measure you use, it shall be measured to you. Why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not notice the plank in your own eye? Okay, so again, have just weights and measures. Do not do unrighteousness in mishpat. With what mishpat you shafat, you will be judged. Don't look at somebody else and say, that's a problem, but look at it within yourself and say, that's not a problem, it's okay, I'll move on from it, I'll develop as a person or whatever, be forgiving of others in the same way. Or how is it that you say to your brother, let me remove the splinter out of your eye and see a plank is in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, then you see clearly to remove the splinter out of your brother's eye. So what is Yeshua saying? He's saying, don't be a hypocrite, correct yourself before you go to other people and start saying, stop doing this. This is a problem. Okay, so if you're tolerant of things within yourself, don't go and judge harshly somebody else. With the measurement that you use to judge somebody else, you will be judged, not by the measurement that you judge yourself with. Okay, have just weights and measures. In Mark 4:23-25, this is when Yeshua is teaching from the boat and the people are on the shore. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. He said to them, take heed what you hear. With the same measure you use, it shall be measured to you, and the more shall be added to you who hear. So it's not saying, don't hear the word of Elohim, because if you do, you're going to be judged by it. It's saying, take heed to what you hear. When you hear something in the word of Elohim, take heed to it and put it in practice. More shall be added to you who hear. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Maybe we don't want to hear. Maybe we don't want more added to us. Then he says, for whoever possesses, whoever hears, whoever understands the secrets of the kingdom of Elohim, to him more shall be given. Okay, this is definitely something that we want, to understand the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, and for more to be given to us. More shall be added to you who hear. But whoever does not possess, even what he possesses shall be taken away from him. I've seen that time and again. Romans 2:1-5 says, therefore, O man, you are without excuse, everyone who judges, who shafats. For in which you shafat another, you condemn yourself. Okay, so don't have unrighteous weights and measures. Since you who shafat or kreno practice the same wrongs. This is what Yeshua is telling us. Okay, remove the plank from your own eye before you go to somebody else. And we know that the justice of Elohim, the mishpat of Elohim would be the word translated into Hebrew, is according to truth. Do no unrighteousness in mishpat, but judge according to truth. We know that the mishpat of Elohim is according to truth against those who practice such wrongs. We know that. So when we judge somebody who's doing wrong as doing wrong, we know Elohim's going to judge people who do such things. So if we're hypocrites and we do the same thing, what we are saying is Elohim is going to judge me with the measure that we judge someone else. We are judged by the same measure. Do you think, O man, you who judge those practicing such wrongs, but doing the same, that you shall escape the judgment or the mishpat of Elohim? Of course not. It's a nonsense. Or do you despise the riches of his kindness and tolerance and patience? Are they of little weight to you? Not knowing that the kindness of Elohim leads you to repentance. And if you think the kindness of Elohim has allowed repentance to you, maybe you should be allowing of that in others. But according to your hardness and your unrepentant heart, you are treasuring up for yourself wrath in the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous justice of Elohim.
I'm in danger.
Last time I'll play that clip. You shall cherish all my laws and all my justice and do them, all my mishpat. You'll cherish all my laws, my chukah, all of my justice. You'll shamar them, you'll guard them, you'll protect them, you'll cherish them, and you shall do them. I am Yehovah. And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, say to the children of Israel, any man of the children of Israel, or of the strangers who sojourn in Israel, who gives any of his offspring to Molech, shall certainly be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. I think it's actually just Moloch. I don't know why there's a line under that in this translation. And I shall set my face against that man, and shall cut him off from the midst of his people, because he has given of his offspring to Moloch, so as to defile my set-apart place and to profane my set-apart name. This is what we do when we represent Yehovah. We're supposed to be that light, and yet we go about doing the same things that the people of the land do. Here, particularly, it's talking about offering their children to Moloch, which would have been done by putting babies on the bronze hands of the statue of Moloch and then heating it up until the baby burnt up. Okay, you can think of abortion today would be something along the same lines, sacrificing the baby to the god of self rather than sacrificing the baby to the god Moloch. In Leviticus 10, we read about this a couple of weeks ago. And Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aharon, each took his fire holder, and he put fire in it and incense on it, and he drew near with strange fire. That is fire which is unlawful. That's what that word means, zur. Before Yehovah in his presence, which he had not commanded them. So these are not only Levites, these are priests. They're people who've been set apart by Yehovah to do his will and to bring his offerings for him. They decided to do something which was against the Torah. Fire came out from Yehovah and consumed them, and they died before Yehovah. And Moshe said to Aharon, this is what Yehovah spoke, saying, by those who come near me, I will be set apart. And before all the people, let me be esteemed. And Aharon was silent. We see in Torah, one of the things which sets Yehovah apart from the world, one of the things that sets us apart as his people, is the death penalty. That he will kill people who go against his Torah. Not because he wants to kill them, because he wants people to know this is the line. If you cross this line, it's the death penalty. This is how serious it is. And Yehovah is set apart in these things. Yehovah says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares Yehovah. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. He is set apart from the world. He's distinct from the world. One of those things is him saying, this is the line. If you cross this line, I will remove you as an evil one from the midst of Israel. If the people of the land at all hide their eyes from the man, as he gives any of his offspring to Moloch, they do not kill him. Then I shall set my face against that man and against this clan, and shall cut him off, and all who go whoring after him, even go whoring after Moloch, from the midst of their people. So when they saw somebody who was doing this sin, even if they hid their eyes from it and they're like, oh, that's not good, but I'm not gonna do anything, I'm gonna have pity on that man, and they do not kill him, then the people are responsible. The soul who turns to mediums, gives his attention, turns his face to mediums and to spirits to go whoring after them, I shall set my face against that soul and cut him off from the midst of his people. So towards the end of this, as towards the end of Charlie's Torah portion, we have the people who are to be executed, and it is a part of being holy, having that set apart standard that Yehovah has. And he doesn't require this of all of the nations. He requires it of his people who know what the law is. Everyone who curses his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death. He has cursed his father or mother. His blood is on him. Okay, and that's an important part of this. In Genesis 9, 5-6, but only your blood for your souls I require from the hand of every beast. I require it. We see when beasts kill man, their lives are required. And from the hand of man, from the hand of every man's brother, I require the soul of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood is shed. So if you are to execute people who have broken the Torah in specific ways, then according to what Yehovah has said, then their blood would be on you. But what he specifies in these things is, cut them off, their blood is on them. So usually their blood would be on you if you killed them for whatever reason you've killed them. But if you do it for these reasons, their blood and their blood guilt is upon them. Numbers 35:33 says, do not profane the land where you are. Blood profanes the land, and the land is not pardoned for the blood or atoned for the blood that is shed on it, except by the blood of him who shed it, except in these cases. A man who commits adultery with the wife of another man, the adulterer and the adulteress, shall certainly be put to death. A man who lies with the wife of his father, their blood is upon them. A man who lies with his daughter-in-law, their blood is upon them. A man who lies with a male as he lies with a woman, their blood is upon them. A man who marries a woman and her mother, that there be no wickedness in your midst, you cut them off. A man who has intercourse with a beast, he shall certainly be put to death, and the beast you kill. I imagine the man's blood is on the beast, maybe, I'm not sure. A woman who approaches any beast and mates with it, their blood is upon them. A man who takes his sister and sees her nakedness, she sees his nakedness, it is wickedness, they shall be cut off before the eyes of their people. A man who lies with a woman during her menstruation, not only is it sin, it will also make you unclean. They shall be cut off from the midst of their people. Do not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, that is laying bare one's own flesh. So all of those other things, they've carried the sentence of being put to death. Here we see a different sentence. Okay, do not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister. You're laying bare one's own flesh. A man who lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. They bear their sin. They die childless. which is interesting because the other things are a punishment from man. Okay? Man could determine whether or not somebody dies childless. We can in our own lives. But this appears to me to be something that Yehovah institutes in somebody's life as a punishment. It says, if you do this thing, you will die childless. So rather than this being in the realm of the judges to carry out, this seems to me to be something that Yehovah carries out. A man who takes his brother's wife, they die childless as well. Again, it seems to be from Yehovah. You shall cherish all my laws and my justices and do them so that the land which I'm bringing you to dwell does not vomit you out. Cherish these things. Okay, let them be warnings to you, because if they're not, the land will vomit you out. No more clips. No more clips. Do not walk in the laws of the nation which I'm driving out before you. You've been redeemed from your futile way of life. In other words, for they do all these, and therefore I loathed them. Yehovah says, you're my set-apart nation. You're my people. You're all going to do these things that I love. You're set apart to me. You will be mine. The nations, they do all of these things. The reason you're to be set apart is because I don't like it when they do them. But I say to you, you are going to possess their land, and I myself give it to you to possess, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am Yehovah your Elohim, who has separated you from the peoples. And as I bedaubed you from the peoples, thus you became kadosh. You shall make a distinction or a separation between clean beasts and unclean, between unclean birds and clean. Do not make yourselves abominable by beast or by bird or whatever creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. We're set apart now. And you shall be set apart to me, for I, Yehovah, am set apart and have separated you from the peoples to be mine, to be kadosh. Shall we pray? Father, I thank you that you've set us apart, that you've taken us from the world, and you've given us the ways of life to walk in, and that by doing so you bless us, and you will give us eternal life. I thank you that it's by doing these amazing things that those amazing things will happen. And I thank you for the promises that you've given to us. Strengthen us by your Spirit, Father. Draw near to us. Thank you, Father. Amen.